Hi, Saoirse. Hi, Queen.
Hi, Raffy. How you doing?
Good. It's a little early, but I'm glad to be talking to you.
Oh,
Been a big fan of yours for years. You and Greta are like my favorite team, so
thank you.
it's nice to be talking.
Yeah.
Congratulations again on the film, and thank you for taking the time out to again speak with me. Um, if you don't want to get to it, my first question is: I wonder if you just take me behind the genesis of your involvement with the film. Mary and Charlotte's characters are so like interesting, and I'm sure there's a lot of women in like history who haven't got their stories told like them before. So, what was it about Charlotte that made you want to play her and bring her story to life on screen?
I mean, initially, I didn't know anything about Charlotte, and I didn't even know anything about Mary Anning. I'd kind of shamefully had never heard of her before, or how important she was in her field. And actually, there's a 10-year-old boy that I know that is very into fossils and geology. And when I told him I was doing a job about this geologist. He was like, "Is it Mary Anning in Lyme Regis?" Yep, that's her.
Wow.
So he knew, but I didn't. And when I started to research her, and then subsequently Charlotte as well, I found it really fascinating that there was um actually quite a large group of women that were incredibly passionate about the subject and really made strides within that world. Mary Anning being the kind of most prominent one. And there isn't that much about Charlotte online. But from what I could find, in terms of her and her husband's involvement in this field, it was actually Charlotte that was interested in it much earlier than her husband, and she got him involved in it because she was so fascinated by it. So that was kind of, it was nice to sort of lay the groundwork with her there, to know that she had a real kind of respect for the work, even if she didn't necessarily um, do it herself, independently. She was there to support these people that were sort of really brilliant at it. And I liked bringing that element out in her, that she was a real sort of supporter, and somebody who got great joy out of another really getting a chance to shine. And yeah, and that was kind of, in terms of the real Charlotte, that was all I knew about her. So the rest was very much imagined, which is what this film is anyway. So
hmm And I read in an interview with Kate Winslet that she and Francis went through a lot of like going through the backstory of their characters. Did you do a lot of that too in preparation with Francis, and did you collaborate in that way to like more go through Charlotte's history and like her life before her and Mary met?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so whatever we kind of came up with was purely just for um our benefit, really. It wasn't going to make its way into the film. So I started to keep a diary as Charlotte, and wrote as her. And it was purely from my imagination, but sort of started to write down what I was interested in, and what my relationship, Charlotte's relationship, was like with her mother and her father, and then her husband, and who her friends were, and how bored she was every day, and how frustrated she was that she had nothing to do. And yeah, and so we sort of just built this world ourselves, and then brought what we had created together in rehearsals.
Mhm. And there's so many, I feel like, period films in the past where like that center on queer narratives, but the story is also like the entire crux of the story is always about how they're having like coming out issues or identity crises. But I feel like Mary and Charlotte are actually very quite comfortable about that aspect of themselves, and they're actually more victims of like the social period, their past relationships, and of the time more than they are of like their sexuality. So I was wondering if you talk about maybe playing that nuance of the characters, and like what was it like just getting to play a queer woman who wasn't all, like agonizing about her sexuality. She was
Yeah, well, that felt more right to me, to be honest. I mean, this is my first time. I've played characters in the past that have sort of been uh, probably like bisexual, quite androgynous in their character,
Mhm.
in a way, sort of genderless. So I've sort of like I've explored that a little bit before, but this was the first time where I played a character that had a sort of full blown relationship with a woman. And the idea of it, of that relationship being purely centered around, say, just the sexual side of their relationship, or something like that, didn't I wouldn't have felt comfortable just exploring that one part of any relationship. So the fact that we got to play two people who, which probably happened to a lot of women around that time, because it wasn't sort of discussed, it wasn't even in the psyche of people back then that women could have romantic relationships with one another, because just they didn't even think that women could enjoy sex. So that wasn't on anyone's sort of stratosphere at all. And so it felt very sort of like pure and very sort of natural progression for these women to make. But what was also very important to me was really getting to sort of highlight the work and relationship that they have together, and how the romance and the love kind of comes out of that, and it comes out of the love of the work. And I thought, like, to see something like that, to see a romantic relationship like that between two people of the same gender on screen, where yes, there's these really sort of like sexy moments as well, but they have a full sort of well-rounded relationship, and like they get on each other's nerves, and sometimes they don't know what to say to one another. And I love how they just sort of settle into their roles with one another. So
It felt really authentic to me watching it, and like nice to see. Like again, like I mentioned, they're not like, oh, my parents won't accept me, but they're like just like really into each other.
yeah, exactly. And you are just sort of following them living this life, this like bubble that they've created for themselves, which is so kind of precious to them. And so it's about everything that contains, really.
And like I mentioned, like kind of leads me to my next question. Like history frequently erases the histories of women, so how much even more so queer women. So I guess just what was it like being a project where queer women are literally the front and center and get their story gets to be told?
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. I feel very lucky as a young actor that as I said, I've been growing up getting to play more and more women that aren't just sort of straight down the line, either this thing or this thing. And I've played a lot of sort of period parts, and to get to explore this type of relationship in the past is wonderful, and it's just selfishly, it's another thing for me to enjoy, really. But I definitely feel very, very lucky that I'm 26 now, and hopefully I'll continue to work for a long time, and roles like this and others that are completely different again will keep coming to all of the actresses my age as we grow up in this industry. So yeah, it's definitely an exciting time.
And you've already mentioned you're only 26, but you've already accomplished so much so far in your career. And you also got to work with Kate Winslet, another freaking legend. So can you just tell me about, like, you haven't worked together previously, like maybe like what was like building your chemistry between Charlotte and Mary together, and like again just getting to work with Kate freaking Winslet.
Rose.
Yeah.
Rose. It was so funny because we when I had been discussing it with Francis, and we were talking about whether this could work and stuff, I was shooting Little Women at the time, and I was on set one day, and I had just done a scene or a shot with Timothy where we were on the ice and we were like swinging each other around, and I said to him, I was like, this is our Titanic moment, like this is the close we're gonna get. And then I went back over to my chair to check my phone, and I had gotten a missed call from Kate, and I was like, I just did your shot. I just did the Rose and Jack shot. But yeah, she's wonderful. I mean, Kate and I have been lucky in that we've crossed paths quite a bit over the last few years at like events and parties, and we've actually interviewed each other for Actor on Actor as well, and done like a little mini photo shoot together and stuff. And just as soon as you meet her, she's incredibly open and approachable and funny. And I think any of the actors that I've gotten on with the best are the ones that I'll have a similar sense of humor with, and you can just sort of mess about with them. and you're professional in what you do, hopefully, but you're not like taking everything too seriously. And Kate has that. So we were very lucky that we kind of just got on straight away.
Well, you can feel it on screen. I love seeing two queens, two icons.
Thank you.
And they love each other. Well, I'm getting I'm getting the wrap signal, but thank you again so much, Saoirse, for taking the time to talk to me. And congrats again on the film. I can't wait for people to see it.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Queen.
Bye.